Colin Wilson, who lived at Goran Haven near St Austell, was one of the most prolific and eclectic writers of the 20th century. In more than 150 books and countless articles and contributions to other works published over 50 years, he covered subjects as diverse as existentialism, esotericism and the occult, religion, biography, and several volumes of autobiography. It is his groundbreaking work on existentialism and creative thinking, The Outsider, published to wide critical acclaim in 1956, that it remains his best-known work. Wilson was born in Leicester on 26th of June 1931, the son of a shoemaker. He left school aged 16 and over the next 8 years took on a variety of unskilled jobs whilst also writing. I kept a voluminous journal which was several million words long by the time I was 24, he later recalled. Since the age of 12, he had been preoccupied with asking the meaning of human existence, and aged 14 had read George Bernard Shaw's Man and Superman, from which he realized that I was not the first human being to ask the question. Now, living rough on Hampstead Heath, working at a cafe and spending his days at the reading room of the British Museum, he had previously been trying to write a novel when the outline of The Outsider came to him. Photographs from the time showed this handsome bohemian figure sitting alone, leant against a tree, wrapped in a sleeping bag, and with a book in hand. Inspired by the title and content of Camus' novel L'Étranger, The Outsider, he sought to rationalize the psychological dislocation associated with Western creative thinking. Wilson took the outline and sample pages to the publisher Victor Gollancz, who immediately accepted the book. The Outsider was published on 26th of May 1956 and sold out of its initial print run of 5,000 copies on the day of publication. The critic Cyril Connolly said it was one of the most remarkable first books I have read for a long time, and Philip Toynbee called it a real contribution to our understanding of our deepest predicament. Wilson's work demonstrates how artists and writers such as Van Gogh, Kafka, and Hemingway are affected by society, and how they, in turn, as outsiders, impact on society. The book made Wilson £20,000, that's equivalent to £430,000 today, in its first year. He said later that he had not been surprised by the positive reaction, but had not anticipated what followed. I'd always known it would happen, but what I didn't expect, of course, was the terrific backswing after it, the tremendous backlash, and the attacks on me which I found pretty hard going. Referring to Religion and the Rebel from 1957, his novel Ritual in the Dark from 1959, and subsequent works over the coming decade, he noted, I'd produce some book which I knew to be brilliant, and I'd get lousy reviews. Evidently, the literary establishment was not pleased at an uneducated working-class writer getting so much attention and praise, despite their initial enthusiasm. With media attention now focused on Wilson's domestic affairs, his publishers suggested that he leave London for Cornwall, where he remained for the rest of his life. Another writer who found success at this time was John Osborne, whose Look Back in Anger had just opened at the Royal Court Theatre. The term angry young men, invented by J.B. Priestley as a label for these new literary upstarts, was first used in the New Statesman the following week, and it stuck. Although Wilson often said it was not a group with which he identified, his later work, The Angry Years, recalls the period and the characters of Osborne, Kingsley Amis, and others. Wilson's book Strength to Dream from 1962, a study of imagination in literature, was a title he later said he should have used for his autobiography, based as it is on a phrase by George Bernard Shaw, every dream can become a reality in the womb of time for those who have the strength to dream. Wilson was certainly one who had that strength to dream and to see the dreams become reality in print. In Introduction to the New Existentialism of 1966, Wilson revisited the themes of The Outsider, suggesting that the old existentialism was a philosophy of man without an organized religion, and that man stood alone. Whereas Wilson says that the challenge that the new existentialism has to face is, can it again point to a clear, open road along which thought can advance with the optimism of the early romantics? And he then goes on to demonstrate that it indeed can. Elsewhere, he speaks of those curious moments of inner freedom which hint at a purpose in an otherwise meaningless world. Towards the end of the 60s, an American publisher commissioned Wilson to write a book on the occult. This work took him in a new direction, towards the realms of the esoteric and alternative history, at a time of considerable interest in New Age subjects. The resulting book, The Occult: A History, from 1971, revived Wilson's reputation with the critics. After 15 years in the critical wilderness, he recalled that the reviews had a serious and respectful tone that I hadn't heard since The Outsider. With a kind of dazed incredulity, I realized that I'd finally become an establishment figure. His later works continued in the dual veins of existentialism and mysticism, but all touching in some way on what he called the curious power of the mind that we hardly understand. Wilson had suffered a stroke in July 2012 and was no longer able to speak. He died on the 5th of December 2013 at Penrice Hospital in St Austell, with his wife Joy and daughter Sally at his side. Colin Wilson, philosopher and writer, born Leicester, 26th June 1931, died St Austell, Cornwall, 5th of December 2013.